Okay, so it is now 11:25. Hi everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful pre-pharmacy day so far and that you've learned a lot. We will now begin the Dean and School Representative panel. My name is Dana Lee and I will be your moderator for this event. If I may ask, could each panelist please state their name and which school they represent?
I'm Helen Park, University of Health Sciences.
I'm Rocky DeMarco. I'm the Associate Dean of Student Affairs from Chapman University School of Pharmacy.
I'm Mark Salvatis. I'm an Assistant Professor of Pharmacy Practice at West Coast University School of Pharmacy.
I'm Joel Gonzalez, the Director of Admissions at UC San Francisco.
I'm Jason McDowell, Outreach and Admissions for California North State University College of Pharmacy.
I'm Kristen Heinrich, Assistant Director for Admissions and Recruiting at the University of Michigan College of Pharmacy.
I'm Tony Potter. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions at Pacific University.
I'm Jordana Berry at Mercer University, Atlanta, Georgia, Director of Admissions.
Thank you so much. And before we start, attendees, please direct your questions to our student question speaker, Harold Hua, via chat. And if there's extra time at the end, your questions will be asked by him. And for our guest speakers, please note our timer, Alyssa Mills, as she will be updating the chat, as well as her Zoom background with the 10 and 5-minute markers for your allotted time. So without further ado, the first question is, what makes your pharmacy school program or curriculum unique?
I guess I'll jump in. First of all, thanks for having us. And again, hello to my colleagues who we would normally probably see many times throughout the course of the year, and we just haven't connected in person. So it's good to see some familiar faces in all of you. I think we're gonna all talk probably about our programs. There's gonna be a lot of overlap, a lot of similarities. I don't think that you can take each program and say this is distinctive from any other program. There's going to be some commonalities and there's certainly some differences. You know, I think speaking about UCSF, you know, I think some of the things I tend to highlight as might be things that could stand out from some other programs or might be a little bit different. First of all, it's a public university and there are many schools of pharmacy in California specifically, but there are a few public schools. So I guess maybe that would be a little bit different. We are a 3-year program. And again, I know there's other 3-year programs out there. So this is where the overlap starts to happen. We are a 3-year program. We have different rotation sites. So during the 3rd year of our 3-year program, our students are on one of 5 different rotation sites around California, which is nice because we do admit students from across the state. One thing about UCSF that is different than the other campuses, and I know you're all familiar with the UC system in general, is UCSF is a graduate school only. So it's the only UC in the UC system that is just focused on graduate education. And in the graduate education arena, it's only focused on the health sciences. And so it's only professional students pursuing doctoral degrees or PhD degrees in some area of research. So there's a huge emphasis on interprofessional education at our university. It's how pharmacy is practiced. And so it's certainly how students are trained. Finally, you know, our program is really, really focused on sort of that next step that students would pursue after a PharmD degree. And so we really prepare our students to pursue residency, and really excited that in 2020, UCSF had the highest match rate in the country for residency. Just the majority of the students that are admitted into our program are sort of have their eye on that next step. And we really work with them through the course of the program to prepare them to be competitive and to match for a residency. So thank you.
So I'm happy to jump in next. It was so nice to hear Joel's introduction because I think he hit all the right notes in terms of we're so excited to be here and to see all of you as students, but we're also excited to see each other as colleagues because it's been so long. And I was talking to Rocky and just saying from Chapman because we work with each other. And I think, I'm not sure how much students are familiar with the collaboration and the collegiality, but, just, I can't wait to see Jordana, I can't wait to see Jason, I can't wait to see all of our peers and kind of come together and talk about something that we all share, and it's our shared passion for pharmacy. So for Roseman, what makes Roseman unique, it's similar to kind of what Joel was saying is, we're a 3-year institution as well. We're located in Henderson, Nevada and South Jordan, Utah. I'd say kind of the distinguishing things are our 6-point mastery learning model. We have a block system. It's one class at a time, one test that you have to study for. So I think that's pretty neat, and it allows you to focus. If any of you were just at the session with Dr. Christensen Grant, I think that was a fun session where he tied in some gaming and some elements with how you can be a better applicant, leveling up. We're able to apply some of those fun things in our curriculum as well. So I'd say our faculty there do a great job. I think what makes us super special though, and this is just because I have a bias for our students, is it's our students. I think, they create the culture and the environment and, the heart of the organization. And they, I think that's what makes us, I guess, special. And maybe it's our pass, no pass, or because it's such a collaborative environment and you're not competing, but something magical happens. And then it creates a good place for them to be. I'm at a COVID vaccine clinic today. You have a virtual background. I stepped down for this, but I'm so proud of our students because they're actually there on the front lines, really putting into action, what they, the purpose of going into this profession. And so I guess all in all, I'd say our students and our culture and of course, our educational model. Thank you.
And I'll go next. So great to see you, Helen. And I definitely want to echo what was stated by Helen and Joel. This is a very collegial environment. I think really what's important to everyone here is that we want to help you all figure out what's going to be your best fit. So we would love to have you at our institutions, but sometimes it may not be what's going to be best for you. Because like Helen and Joel said, we are an accelerated 3-year program. Some of you might actually benefit from a 4-year program as opposed to a 3-year program. So we're, what we are hoping to do is just make sure that we are enrolling people who are passionate about pharmacy, who are going to be making a difference in the healthcare field. And so that's really what we're concerned about. We obviously would love to have you consider each of our individual institutions, but that's paramount, I think, for everyone. And we're all in this profession because we're passionate about working with students and empowering them and seeing them succeed. Now, in terms of Chapman, some of the differentiating aspects of our program compared to others, we are also an accelerated 3-year program, but we focus heavily at Chapman on a personalized learning experience. And so it's really important for us to have smaller class sizes, that you're going to get to know your peers and you're going to get to know your faculty on much deeper levels. And so we facilitate that through a flipped classroom and active learning model. And so it really is a collaborative environment. And we want you to be able to learn by applying as opposed to just lecturing. And so we really try to focus on that. And because we are a relatively newer institution, our facility will allow us to be able to do that. We have active learning classrooms. We're using state-of-the-art technology. It's a really impressive campus, and a campus that is only a few miles away from UCI. So that's really great if you like the Irvine area. We also are one of the very few schools that has a career advisor that's focused entirely on pharmacy students. And so we have someone whose entire role is to ensure that our incoming students, our current students, and our alumni are going to be taken care of from the perspectives of internships, full-time positions, but also residencies and fellowships as well. And then we also have a number of research opportunities. We are heavily focused on research, even though we are a newer institution. We're already in the top third of schools of pharmacy in terms of the research that we are generating. And then I'm just going to close by saying one thing that we're not unique with anymore is that we do not require the PCAT anymore. It's an optional thing. So I do want to make mention of that because we seem to be the only school last year that did require the PCAT. So I will hand it off to my next colleague here.
I'll go next. So I'm from Mercer. I mentioned we're in Atlanta, Georgia. So we're probably the furthest away from you, being across the country. But that's a unique thing. So if you're thinking about exploring outside your state, we have a number of students who've come to us from California to try to get a taste of something different. Atlanta is actually the capital of our state. So you get to see kind of that big city, but we're not too far from rural. So if you're interested in kind of figuring out what rural medicine is like, we have some of that as well. Something unique that we started this year, actually this month, is we have a new spring entry point. So we're not a 3-year program, we are a 4-year program, but that spring entry point actually speeds up first year with a spring summer first year instead of a fall spring. And then those students will join with our P2s in the same year that they do their P2. So that's a little bit different. It cuts off that year. So doing it a little bit quicker, getting out a little sooner. But I mention it because we know, and all of us have seen this in our years being in admissions, especially, that there are some students who get a little off track or they speed up and they want to come in quicker. So this gives us that flexibility of having 2 entry points. So if you think I'm not going to be ready for an August or a summer fall entry point, we now have a spring or January entry point that might fit as well. It sounds like a lot of us are doing similar things, flipped classroom, active learning, a lot of that. So at Mercer, we've got a lot of that going on as well. We're very team oriented. So we, want to prepare you to not just be practice ready, but team ready, so that you can be on that healthcare team and figure out what your role is before you get there. So another thing that we do.
I'll go next if that's okay. Hi, everyone. Kristen Heinrich from the University of Michigan. So, Eastern time zone over here. So University of Michigan College of Pharmacy is actually the oldest pharmacy school at a public institution, or we were the first pharmacy school at a public institution. We've got a lot of rich history when it comes to kind of the contributions that the College of Pharmacy has had to pharmacy in general. I think a lot of what has been said is, very similar, but we're a 4-year program, and the philosophy of our program is that we want to allow students those summers between P1 and P2 year, P2, P3 year, to do and explore what they want to outside of the classroom. So that could be additional research, it could be internships, it could be working. So it just depends on kind of what you want to do during that time, but we want students to really have that additional time to explore and delve deeper into pharmacy. We have research that's embedded into our curriculum. So every single student does a research project with a faculty mentor. And that could be bench research where you're working in the labs, or it could be where you're studying, for example, one of our current pharmacy students is studying perceived versus actual burnout rate of residents. And so they're working right now on getting that published. And so a lot of our pharmacy students are published by the time they graduate. And then they also present at our research forum their P at the end of the P4 year. With our rotations, students have access to hospitals throughout Southeast Michigan, but I think what's really unique is that we have one of the top hospital systems in the country right on our doorstep. Michigan Medicine is the #5 hospital system in the country, and our students have access to that. So it gives them that additional experience of being at a destination hospital, essentially. And with our interprofessional education opportunities, we are really excited when our students are able to interact with other students at the University of Michigan. We're one of the top public schools in the country. And so our students will be participating in service learning projects or elective classes with students from the top social work program in the country. Michigan Medicine or the medical school. They'll be interacting with students from our School of Public Health and our Ross School of Business. And so you're really getting that full scope of what it's like to be working with people from all walks of life and all educational backgrounds. One piece that our experiential education office is, they're wonderful, but they are really great at getting a wide variety of APPE rotations available to our students. So as a P4, you will be doing 8 5-week rotations. And we have over 500 preceptors at 200 sites around the country, including the non-continental United States, Alaska, and Puerto Rico. And then we do have a rotation as well in Kenya. So the experiences that you want as a student are definitely available to you. And we even have a small class size. So only 85 students are in each class. And that really allows for that connection and that community that our students have with each other as well as the faculty.
I can go next. I know Jason, I'll make sure there's time for you as well too. So with Pacific University, we're also a 3-year program as well. But I kind of echoing off of what my colleagues are talking about, thinking about something that might be unique to us is we're a learner-centered environment. So instead of like a teaching-centered environment where we ask how we teach the students, we really ask how the pharmacy students are learning. And evidence of that is we used to be a block curriculum the last couple of years, and now we're changing to an integrated semester-based curriculum with a grading scale. We found that our students, the block curriculum, the pass, no pass, just wasn't helping them to learn as much as they could, preparing them for the NAPLEX and for residency. So we changed a little bit and just made sure we'd center on how our students are learning. And that I think our faculty and our dean really make sure to put the students first, which I'm sure all of these pharmacy schools are in that same boat. But yeah, that's just a little bit about us. And we're located in Oregon in the Northwest. So the nice thing about our campus is you're 50 minutes from the beach or 50 minutes from the mountain. If you have an outdoorsy type of lifestyle, or if you really like to stay active, especially with other students on the weekend or something like that, get away from your study breaks. There's plenty to do in our location. So.
Awesome. Same thing that everyone's been saying. There's going to be a lot of similarities. What kind of sets our school apart, we have been team-based learning and we continue to be team-based learning even through the transition to distance learning classrooms. So we've kept that aspect of our curriculum intact through this whole time, which has been really incredible. One of my favorite things about California North State, we are the top school of pharmacy geographically in California. So we're right next to the capital. If you're wondering where that is, it isn't San Francisco and it isn't LA, it's actually Sacramento. So we're right next to the capital. And one of the things that we've started doing with some of our fellow colleagues in the Sacramento and greater Sacramento area is started a Capital Leadership Forum, which really talks about how we work with politics and the government with pharmacy and pharmacy advocacy. So that's been a really big push for some of our faculty and also for some of our students to get involved with the big organizations like CPHA and APHA and trying to push pharmacists, and we're seeing that. We're seeing a lot of headway. Obviously, Helen's at one right now, and we're not doing one today, but we did one yesterday. Is a COVID-19 vaccine clinic. Those are pharmacists frontline, right now, and it's scary and incredible and exhausting all at the same time. But there's a lot of opportunities. What I would say, just since I'm the last one to go, is go through all the schools, research and figure it out. You're gonna find a school that's gonna fit you.
Okay, thank you so much. The next question is, what are the most important factors that an admissions panel looks for when reviewing an application, and what experiences can allow an applicant to stand out?
I'll go first this time. There's going to be a lot of overlap between all of us on this panel. I would say that one of the best things to do is make sure whatever activity or whatever experience you have, make sure to be able to talk about it. Make sure to know everything about that experience, and keep a journal, keep something so that you can express what you did, and be able to kind of really give the highlights, the bullet points, and then also to talk about it during your interview about whatever experience you had, whether that was volunteer experience, whether that was being a farm tech, whether that was research experience, or whether that was just handling today. Today's a big day and it's a big transition. I'm kind of sad we're not getting a stuffed anteater. So sad, zot. But but take those experiences and have the information so that when you go to write your application, when you go to write your personal statement, you have that, and it's fulfilled. It isn't, oh yeah, I was a farm tech. Like, okay, but what did you do? What was special about you being a farm tech? What was special about your location? Have that information.
I can go next. One thing kind of adding on to that, lately, especially the last couple of years, is strong letters of recommendation. For most pharmacy schools, it's preferred to have a pharmacist be a letter of recommendation. So if you haven't shadowed one or you haven't been in contact with one, it's good to start that process up and just have a connection with them. So then when they do write you a letter of recommendation, it's strong. But at the same time, it doesn't need to be from a pharmacist. If you have a professor, research fellow that you're working with, something like that, that can attest to both your interest in pharmacy and your ability to complete pharmacy doctorate school. Those are kind of the two things that we look for. So strong letters of recommendation, and this is a good time to start thinking about who you want to choose for those letters of recommendation when you are applying to your schools and everything.
I would, we're right in the midst of our admissions cycle right now. I think all of us are. We actually have an interview day today, so we're kind of really overwhelmed with online experiences today. But I think there's two sort of approaches in being in what we look for. One is just the pure mechanics of it, in terms of having all your stuff in on time, following instructions, making sure your transcripts have been submitted by the deadline date, making sure your letters of recommendation have been submitted. I mean, there's a lot to be said about an applicant who's just prepared for the process. And I think that sometimes comes across in the applicant themselves when they're not prepared. You start to see other red flags in their application. So first and foremost, just being prepared. There is a huge window of time when the applications become available until all of us have a deadline. And so there really should never be an excuse why you don't have sort of all your ducks in a row and everything in order. So just having the mechanics of the application process under your belt really can help you be a successful applicant. And then the other thing I would say, and I always tell applicants this, is, don't try to be the applicant that you think any of us are looking for. I think at the end of the day, we just want to know you. We want to know your experiences, your intentions of pursuing a PharmD degree, your aspirations, motivations, inspirations. Like, what is it that has gotten you to this point and is going to sustain you through pharmacy school and into the future? And that's nothing that any of us can tell you. That comes from your own lived experiences. And so I always encourage applicants to just be authentic. Speak with your own voice. Sure, have an application that is proofread, but not so overly edited that you lose a sense of who you are in the application. And as we're in the midst of our interview process, again, goes back to the mechanics of, being on time, making sure you're reading all the documentation that we all send you upon receiving your application. I mean, those things are kind of given. And at the doctoral level, I think the stakes are raised that much greater, that we can expect sort of a higher level of engagement with an applicant. And certainly in the pharmacy profession, we can expect a level of detail. I mean, we want to admit people who are going to read the fine print. You're going to spend your career encouraging patients to do the same. And so we kind of want to make sure that you're modeling that behavior as you enter a PharmD program.
I'll go after Joel. I want to piggyback on something you said, and it's that level of detail. and tying it back to your future career, because we are looking at you as that future professional, that future, not just student, but the person who's going to take care of our parents or ourselves or our kids. So we are looking for that level of detail, but we are also looking for that authentic person who's going to, at least in our program at Mercer, we want to see that you care. You know, it's not just about having the best application, but it's that I care enough to put forth my best in the application process. So knowing what that looks like and knowing yourself. So just wanted to add that little nugget.
One thing that I think can help, so just to, before I preface into that tip, but University of Michigan, we do a very holistic application review process, like I know many of my colleagues do as well. So there's no minimum GPA, but my recommendation is that if you had a class or maybe a semester where your grades dipped down a little bit, don't just brush it off. Really take the time. There's generally in the FarmCast application, like places where you can make additional and put additional information. And that's a really great way to kind of explain what happened. Maybe you had a family emergency or something else was going on that semester where your grades dipped and then you were able to turn it around, you retook the class and did a lot better. You know, all of those key pieces of information can be really helpful as we're looking at you as a whole person, as your authentic self. So it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be open with us because, you know, we also have a community where we're making sure that we take care of each other and that our students are progressing. And so, you know, we definitely don't count students out. Especially if they kind of give us a little bit of a background and let us know what happened. So I know they've gotten a lot of other tips as well that I would definitely agree with, but I think that that's one that I always tell students.
I'm going to follow you up because you made a really great point. And I think it goes back to the whole holistic nature of how many of our institutions review candidates. And you know, for us, I mean, I think all schools are going to value to some degree. They're going to be looking at your academic performance. GPAs are going to be important. So we're going to be looking at, you know, different GPAs as well, not just your cumulative, but also looking at prerequisite, science, and break it down by subjects. However, we also look at it from the perspective of what might have happened when you're in college, what type of student you are. Are you a first generation student? There's troubles with transition to college. It's a fact. And so we're going to be looking at those types of things. We're going to be looking at individual terms. So maybe you have a bad term, maybe a bad quarter or something like that. And spending the time on the application to address those things will help us better understand what might have happened. And then we can forgive bad instances of academics performances. So it's one of those things that I think it's really important. It's a great point that Kristen just made, to be open and to be honest about your academic performance, and that'll help shed light on what might have transpired for you. And then one other tip that I would like to give is any school, any doctor of pharmacy program is going to be a challenge. It's not an easy degree. And one thing that we really try to emphasize, especially on interview day, we want to know your passion for pharmacy. What is it that's driving you to become a pharmacist? Because in those days when you have all those tests weighing down on you, when you have all those challenges and you're being pulled in so many different directions, what's going to get you to the finish line is going to be that passion. And so if you can put that in your application, if you prepare to talk about that during your interviews, you will be really well served because it tells us that you're very interested in it. And that's why we also value pharmacy experiences. So if you've done any shadowing or volunteering at pharmacies, if you're a pharmacy technician or if you've worked in any capacity at a pharmacy, that tells us a lot, and that's something that we value.
All right, I think I'm the last one on this question. And I think it really just gets summed up nicely with what we're looking for in terms of our admissions committee in a prospective or student or applicant is your potential to be an outstanding pharmacist, that you're going to be caring, that you're going to be competent, and that you're going to work in an ethical manner to do what's in the best interest of the patients. And that's ultimately, you know, not only just what we're looking for, I imagine across the board, we're trying to assess that potential, that passion. I think Rocky said that really nicely in terms of your interest, your desire to serve, and what drives that desire. So, lots of times what we'll look at specifically to kind of make that type of assessment is, what type of leadership roles have you taken, if any, right? In terms of your activities outside of school, what are those extracurricular activities that you've done? Have you had any part-time jobs? Did you do part-time jobs and hold a leadership position? Because if so, then really that stands out in a number of ways, because it shows us that you could manage a lot more on your plate, that you can organize your time well, and that you're while doing all that able to maintain good grades. I think that really does kind of paint a nice story. And then going back to something that Joel said is, it also kind of boils down to your level of professionalism, right? So our profession of pharmacy, it's something that we're all very, we care about as pharmacists. So as pharmacists, it's our profession comes first, right? And we care a lot about it. And so in order to join this profession, we want to make sure that those who join us are also taking that oath very seriously, that they'll represent not only their school well, but more importantly, that they're going to represent the profession of pharmacy well and help us kind of take that next step forward to continue to advance our profession. And especially right now with the COVID pandemic, this is the time for pharmacists. This is the time in which we are answering that call to duty, really showing the general public that we're here to help, and we are very not just able, but we are well qualified, well positioned, and this is something that that drives us and that we're passionate about in terms of patient care. So I guess just overall, it's showing us that potential on paper in your application, and then of course you'll have the you may have the opportunity to interview, and then the interview component would be your opportunity to really bring what you put on paper to life.
Rocky mentioned something, and I think it's something that we don't convey often to applicants and prospective students. Students are often focused on their GPA, so it's sort of that bottom line number. But one of the things that we receive as schools when your application's been completed and submitted to us is sort of a one-page GPA summary. And that page includes, I think it's like 45 different ways to look at a GPA from your transcript. So, by year, by school, by subject, by, science, non-science. And that doesn't even include all of our respective sort of GPA individual calculations if we do that. So, I often encourage students to understand that we don't look, for the most part, I don't think that we look at bottom line numbers, but we look at, trends. We look at sort of, how you've done if you transferred from a community college to a university, maybe how you've done in the past couple of terms or the past couple of years. So there's so many ways to look at somebody's academic performance. And I think it's safe to assume it's very, very rarely ever just a bottom line number that determines competitiveness or fit for a school. There's so many different variables that we can look at. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay, the next question is, what are some extracurricular or community outreach programs that your students can take part in?
So I'll start on that. It's an easy one for us because we are leading the charge in Nevada and soon to follow in Utah. But right now with the pandemic, we are in the forefront of leading these COVID vaccination clinics, COVID vaccination just sessions for the general public to learn more and what they can do to mitigate the spread and to teach about vaccines and vaccine hesitancy. And so Right now, that's one of the main components that our students are invested in. We're having bi-weekly Wednesdays and Saturday COVID vaccination clinics across 2 parts of our town, just to kind of help to do our part in putting a dent in the numbers vaccinated. In addition to that, I mean, we have a tremendous amount of extracurricular and community outreach programs. One of the things we're really excited about is that our student orgs have kind of blossomed over the years, and we have some new ones. Our most recent student org that we have is our Black Student Union in our College of Pharmacy and across all of our health programs. And so we have a presentation coming up on Monday where we're talking about vaccine hesitancy in minority communities. And so I think wide variety of ways to kind of participate at, whether it's outreach at a clinic or healthcare event or through student orgs, and advancing our profession, advancing your knowledge, or giving and serving to others.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on what Helen said. I mean, it's amazing how one little thing like COVID-19 changes all the things that the students are doing. We've started our COVID clinic. Next week we start, I would say, in earnest, where we start. It'll be Monday through Thursday, and then in the afternoon and evening, and all day Friday. Since we were one of the only ones in our area to have the freezer that could handle the Pfizer vaccine, which was a big deal, and it's if you know how volatile that one actually is, it's scary. You almost don't want to turn off your light when you leave your office for fear that it might turn off something else. But when we get back up and running and COVID's more behind us than it is in front of us, it's flu clinics. It's going out to the community and talking about health related topics and smoking cessation and diabetes and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of opportunities. Each club and organization will have their own drive. Just like at some point you'll pick a pharmacy school that you think fits best for you. When you're in pharmacy school, you'll find a club or organization that you feel fits best with you and where your heart is in pharmacy, or where your heart is in helping whatever community that might be, whether it's a cultural community, whether it's an age community, whatever that community is, you'll find an organization that's dedicated or has a dedication towards that.
One of the unique parts of our curriculum is that a service learning project is part of it. So all students are required to get out into the community. Obviously this year looks a little different with that service project, but the students will go out and they'll volunteer. And that's, like I said, a part of the curriculum, just to really get to know the community and understand Southeast Michigan, Detroit, Ann Arbor. Another thing that our students really value as far as leadership, it's just the different clubs and organizations that we have in the College of Pharmacy, whether it's our pharmacy student ambassadors that help connect students with our program that haven't even applied yet. They're kind of like our connection to the student body as far as like recruitment and admissions goes. We have like Rho Chi and Phi Delta Chi, which are Phi Delta Chi is service learning, kind of professionalism, brotherhood type of fraternity, but it's open for anybody. You don't have to be male to be a part of it. And then we also have Phi Delta Chi as well, or Rho Chi and Phi Delta Chi. So those are honor societies that were actually founded at the University of Michigan. So I think that's, those are different leadership opportunities. And then we have different professional organizations that do fundraising and volunteer work in the community and the clinics. We have a flu clinic every year. Even during the pandemic, we had a flu clinic with all the precautions that came with it. So I think that, our students really do value giving back and really wanting to make a difference. And that's kind of what we look for in the application anyway, is we want students who want to make a difference in the world. And so it's really easy to get involved and do something outside of the classroom. My big recommendation to you all, and you've probably heard this before, is don't get involved with every single organization that you can in whatever college of pharmacy, whatever school of pharmacy you attend. It's really about finding those 2 to 3 things, having the leadership roles in those organizations, and really thriving and focusing in on those specific things that you're passionate about. Quality is really important, and that's much more important than quantity.
That's a great point. Again, I'm piggybacking on what you had to say, Kristen. But it is a great point, and I think something that's worth mentioning as well. It's also good, I think, to kind of ease yourself into involvement when you get to pharmacy school. I think it's, a lot of you are really excited, interested, and passionate about pharmacy. And just like every other institution here, we have a number of student organizations. We have 15 at our school. That have different purposes, and they're interacting with the community and putting on major events and taking part in major events and outreach. But what we find are those that struggle at the beginning of the program tend to overextend themselves. And so I think it's good to get an understanding of what each of these organizations do, and then also try to figure out which one's going to be the best fit for you, but also, take your time in getting acclimated to pharmacy school before you dive headfirst into all of these amazing opportunities that will be available to you. So that's a piece of advice I can give you when it comes to extracurricular opportunities. But yeah, I think every school here is going to have a number of organizations that are doing some amazing, incredible work. And we're seeing it here at Chapman too, in the Orange County area, working with different cities and churches and groups, and within fundraising opportunities, COVID vaccine clinics, flu vaccine clinics, et cetera. So I think you're going to find that any institution is going to have a lot of great opportunities that are available to you to be able to do that outreach that I know you all are passionate about because you're interested in pharmacy.
To piggyback on that, something that we have at Mercer, I think a lot of us are doing service learning. A lot of us have these opportunities with student organizations. We do at Mercer as well. But something else that the pandemic kind of put a damper on this year was our ability to reach out beyond some of our more local activities that we do in our local community, such as our international rotations. We actually have students who go on medical missions type rotations in their 4th year. And that, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, couldn't happen. But we encourage our students to just get involved at any level, whether it's through that kind of a mission trip during a rotation, or even as a future pharmacist. We have pharmacists that do that. They take their time to be on those mission trips when they can. But also looking at organizations and saying, okay, what do I want to do at the school level? But what do I want to do at the state, the region, or the national level? And kind of figuring out, once you figure out that niche, what do I want to do with that? Because as you've heard, I'm sure it's not just about what you know, it's about who you know and how you network. And that's where a lot of these service learning, community-based student organization activities are going to help you with that. It's not just about the peer next to you in class. That's a big deal too, but it's also, who am I going to meet? Because we see a lot of our pharmacy students just coming to these conventions, which I know this year we're more like this on Zoom, but meeting each other and learning from each other, because those are your future peers too. It's not just your classmates, but those classmates across the country.
And then I'll just add one final thought of, if you're coming from your undergrad with a student organization, your pharmacy school doesn't have that organization, we can definitely set that up. We've done it numerous times. I feel like with our school now we have 40 student organizations, because students are coming in from all different spots and all different organizations, and then we can help them kind of set those organizations up too. So if there is something you're passionate about and it's not offered at the school you're choosing to go to, you can definitely be the first one to get that organization up and running.
Okay, this is going to be our very last question. Please describe the interview process at your pharmacy school, and what advice would you give to candidates on interview day?
So our interview day, I'm sure everyone else, it looks different than what we usually anticipate for it. We try to recreate the interview day as best as we can through Zoom. But really, as my colleagues are going to talk about, we just want to get to know you. Our interview day itself is set up to where We give a brief presentation. We have you meet with current students. You get to talk to P1 and P students before your interview. They can kind of help answer some questions, kind of calm the nerves a little bit. And then the interview itself is really only 30 minutes where you're talking with 1 or 2 faculty members. We say it's an interview day, but really it's just a day for you to learn more about our program as well as us to learn more about you. And the actual interview itself is really just 30 minutes of answering some of the normal interview questions. But hopefully with the next year coming up, we'll see if we can get people back onto campus for the interview day. I'm sure most of my colleagues are in the same boat too. So.
Yeah, definitely on the same page there. And really, it's a great point that he made. It's an opportunity for not only us to learn about you, but it's also for you to learn about us. And so we want to design a day that's going to give you all the relevant information you need to make your decision if you are offered admission. And so in terms of what our interview process looks like, we have 3 30-minute individual sessions. We are remotely interviewing, but yeah, just like said, when we get the ability to come back to campus, we absolutely will be bringing people back to campus for the interviews. One piece of advice that I certainly want to emphasize, we're going to have your application, we're going to have all your materials, and you certainly can bring that up during your interviews and make that known during the day. I think really though, what the interview is designed to do for us is sort of figure out those final pieces that may not come through very well in the application. And so we're going to be looking for your communication skills. We're going to be looking to see if you can flesh out maybe some things that might be missing on your application. And we're also going to be looking to try to determine how you work in a team-based environment, because our curriculum is heavily focused on those collaborations. And so that's going to be the main point of our interview day. And I would imagine most of my colleagues are going to be looking for the same thing. It's just an opportunity for you. So keep that in mind as you go through the interview process. It's your opportunity to kind of shine, show everything that may not be reflected in your application, and then also to learn a lot more about where you're going to consider attending.
I know we're tight on time now, so I'll make it super quick. One tip of advice is the Zoom or platform consideration. So if it's Zoom or WebEx or whatever it is, I would advise you to kind of get familiar with that platform, because if you log in right at your time and then you can't figure it out, or you can't get your sound working, that's the equivalent of being late in person. It doesn't bode well for you. So that's probably a really, I think a good tip to help you look like an amazing start to your interview is know how the functionality works, and then that'll make it less stressful for you as well. And then this goes back to what Joel said. When you answer questions, don't answer with something you think we want to hear. Answer, it's so much better to be authentic, what you truly think and feel. That goes a long way. When you try to do anything other than that, it does come across and it's not favorable for you. So those would be my top 2 pieces of advice.
I would just add too, and again, we're in the midst of our interview cycle right now, and so I'm seeing it every day, is the interview is one piece of a big puzzle. The application on average is about 30 pages long. Letters of recommendation. I mean, there's just so much to a candidate. And I think that candidates place too much emphasis on the interview as sort of the do or die piece of the application process. And again, it's not the deciding factor, but it's a piece of a much larger puzzle. And so sort of keep that in perspective and not put too much pressure on yourself as you move through an interview process.
One quick thing.
Go for it.
With virtual, just going to say this out. Even though we can't see your pants or your lower half, pretend that we can. Dress professionally from top to bottom, because it's going to make you feel like you're in that scenario where you're in person and actually interviewing. Even if we can't see it, it's going to help you psychologically, just kind of mentally prepare for what this interview is. Sorry, Jason.
No, that's fine. I was just pants too, because I've seen someone wearing with basketball shorts, but also along with Joel, if you've made it to the interview, good news, we like you so far. So you've made it to that point. So the interview, and to go along with what Rocky said as well, it's an opportunity to highlight what you maybe think is your strongest feature. And we may want to ask you a certain question about anything. Just be ready to talk about anything that's on your application, but also be ready to bring something like a question or a highlight from your personal experience.
One thing that wasn't mentioned, but I'll mention it because we're doing it, is we did transition our multi-mini or MMI to Zoom. It was different to do that, but we have succeeded in doing that, and we'll continue to do that. But one good thing, if anything, that could come out of the pandemic is we're actually going to probably keep these Zoom interviews even past the pandemic, because we know students who are not that close to our campus might want to interview, but don't have the funds to come all across the campus to see us. So while we would invite you to come to campus, we know it's not always possible. So I think that's a good thing, is we're going to look at using these things we had to do in the midst of a pandemic and see how we can continue them for future applicants.
So unfortunately, we are out of time and won't be able to get to the attendee questions. We can share the emails of the representatives if that is all right with them, and you may direct your questions to them afterwards. Thank you again to all of our panelists for answering the questions. It was great seeing so many familiar faces. Can we please get a warm round of applause for our panelists? And at this time, we will be having a 5-minute break. Please return to the next designated Zoom meeting for our closing statements, equal opportunity drawing, and sponsorship Jeopardy information. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is anyone else hungry? I am so hungry right now.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.